Welcome to the Sagasu Running podcast, live stream, Shoe Talk Live. It's all of that. And this will be episode number 6. For me, it's August 22nd, 2026. For most of you listening, I think it's still August 21st, 2026. Again, as I always say, I'm from the future. Hope everyone is having a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're watching or listening to this. If you're in the VOD or the podcast, appreciate all of that. A few topics to get into, but the first thing I want to mention is last week I launched my new newsletter, the Sagasu Running Dispatch. If you're interested in that, go to sagasurunning.com/dispatch or look for a link in the description or show notes. And you can find all the information there. You can find the sign up. I'll also put a link to the video that I did announcing that to kind of talk about what's in that and why. That'll be in the show notes or description, depending on what you're interested in. So again, the Sagasu Running Dispatch, my new newsletter. Excited about the opportunities there. And again, if you're interested, sagasurunning.com or sagasurunning.com dispatch, you'll find everything you need. So with that out of the way, let's get into some of the topics. So the first topic I wanted to talk about was Strava. So about 10 days ago, I published my I'm leaving Strava video after 15 years. That was something I thought about for a long, long time, and I struggled with for at least 6 months as a creator. The struggle I had was that Strava allowed me to actually share with all of you, and there was about 2,000 of you that followed me over there. Allowed me to share notes, of what I was running in when I was testing something, but also, show what I'm running in. And like if I review a shoe and I review it favorably, you can go check there and see that I'm still running in it. If I'm actually running in the shoe after a review, it means I really like that shoe. And there was a bunch of them this year that was doing that. But Strava just has its issues. I finally reached my breaking point with it. Again, I talked a lot about that in the video. I'll put a link in the description or show notes if you missed that or you didn't see that. But basically, I deleted my Strava account after 15 years of data. The account that I actually deleted was about 10 years of data because I had an account before that. And I don't miss it. I've not really used Strava since the end of May. We're at the end of August, and I don't even think about Strava. The only time I think about Strava is basically when I'm going through comments on my channel. I'm seeing people commenting in the video. And what's interesting, really what I wanted to talk about, was I saw kind of 2 or 3 trends in the comments for that video that align with what I was seeing in the larger industry. But also, if I was a potential investor in Strava, I would not be happy. I would not be excited. So Strava is still planning an IPO. They've had that in the works since 2020, though everything I was reading that analysts think that now in 2026, it's realistic. It's the most realistic it's been, though given market conditions and the chaos in the markets right now, who knows? Doesn't feel like a good time to be doing an IPO, especially an IPO for a company that doesn't have really any AI hooks. And the whole AI thing is the thing that's making the market so volatile as well. Doesn't seem like good timing for an IPO, but regardless, Strava is still planning an IPO. And when I'm looking at that, and again, the trends that I saw in the comments, again, should make any potential investor take pause. The 3 things I really saw, 2 or 3 things I really saw. The first one was that the only real thing that people liked about Strava is the social aspect of it. That's the thing that, for the most part, kept people on the platform. Either they felt like they had to be there because of some group that they're part of or staying connected with their friends, or they just wanted to see that stuff. They wanted to stay in their little circle or their club or whatever that is. There were some other people who liked some of the segments and they found that motivating and mapping and all that stuff. But for the most part, most people that were saying something positive were saying about the social layer. And really, that's the only layer that Strava, at least in the app, has that really matters. I made a video about Strava last summer. At a high level as a company, Strava isn't really even a sports or fitness company. They're a mapping and geodata company. The most valuable piece of infrastructure and data that Strava has is not all the running data. It's the geodata, all of the segments, all of the mapping, all of the routes that every runner's ever done. They do a lot with that with Strava City and all the stuff they do with city planning and all that stuff, infrastructure planning for, cities and countries and governments. That's what's valuable about Strava. It's not the social layer. It's not the actual app that they built. It's all that geodata. So the social layer is interesting because that has nothing to do with the geodata. Yes, you're looking at routes and segments and all this stuff, but it's not the same. The thing that sets Strava apart from everything else in the space is that it has that social layer. Garmin, Koros, a bunch of other apps have that social layer, but the problem with the app in your that you get with your watch, which is usually a better thing for the data and analytics, is that it only works within Garmin or Koros. So like all your friends need to all have a Garmin or Koros, and not everyone knows everyone with the same brand. So that's where Strava kind of has always worked because it kind of glues across all of those layers. And there's no other player in the space that does that. So that's a big thing. The second trend that I saw was that I would say the majority of people that were saying something positive about Strava were newer runners, people who said they have started in the past year or couple years, and they find segments and a lot of the tracking and some of the analytics that Strava has as motivating, as cool. And I think all of us who, when we first got on Strava, definitely felt that. We definitely were excited about this stuff because, especially 10 years ago, there was really nothing that was really doing that because the apps that came with your watch just weren't that great. Strava was still the best option, but nowadays it's a totally different story. But I did see a lot of newer runners, giving praise to the platform or saying that they felt like they had to be on Strava to be a runner. It's part of like being a runner now in 2026. It's not, but I saw that. There was other people who were on Strava and not newer runners for a long time that were saying this, but the majority were newer runners. And then the last thing, and this is what I see across the industry or just across the space, is no one really, really loves Strava. No one really was an advocate for the platform. Um, People were on it, and there were a lot of stories about they're on it because of this one thing or because of their group or they feel like they have to, or they've never been on it ever and like they don't see the point in it. But no one came out and was like really like, I love this platform. And that's the point that I think if I was an investor, I would be like, whoa, there's something going on here. Now I've run or I've worked in product companies. I come from a product design background. I've worked in startups. I've been in leadership teams and product companies. And you often will do these sort of user sentiment or you're getting sort of a read on how your users are thinking about your product. And this can be done in a bunch of different ways, but what I saw in the comments was kind of how you would go about that. It's the kind of information you'd be trying to get at in one of those surveys. And if I was in any product team and any product company and I had that kind of user sentiment that I think Strava has across the industry, I would be worried because you don't have any passionate users about the platform. You don't have any advocates, anyone who really loves the platform. I'm sure they're out there. They're probably all based in Boulder, Colorado, but like there's no one that's really deeply passionate. Think about any other app that you use, whether it's real or not, you can find people that are deeply passionate about it. And they love it and they're advocates and they're out there, really kind of telling the story why this is a great thing, great product. The world's a little bit more jaded nowadays, the tech world, but you still find that. I just don't see that with Strava. So if I was a potential investor looking at an IPO and looking to invest in this company, and what's crazy is I pulled this figure. Strava has pulled $150 million for funding, with this kind of run up into the IPO. $150 million is a lot, but it's not a lot, given, tech platforms and tech companies and what their evaluations are and the sort of investment that they get. I wouldn't say it's tiny, but it's not that big compared to what we've also seen in the industry. And then I was seeing like potential valuation for the company around like 2 or $2.2 billion US, which again isn't that big. It's not small, but it's not that big. Given that Strava is the real only platform in the space that does what it does, again with the social layer, yes, there's other players, but no one is Strava. No one's as big as Strava. No one's across the industry. That just doesn't feel like a sound investment. So we'll see. We'll see what the future of Strava is. I don't know. Don't I can't think of what would bring me back. And I'll talk more about that this coming week. I'll be doing a video. It's getting a little bit more into the topic, not Strava specifically, but about running analytics and data. So stick around and stay tuned for that if you're interested. But interesting stuff with Strava. I think the other component to this is that Garmin, I believe it was Garmin's acquisition of Training Peaks. Um, that could be a big deal. That could. I need to dig into that a bit more. I haven't had time, but I'm actually, now that I'm talking about it, I'm going to make a note about it because I do want to talk about that thing because I think that's a big deal. I think that could be one of the things that maybe actually starts to chip away at the social layer, at the cross layer that Strava has dominated. The last point on Strava, again, that valuation, the amount of capital they've raised, again, not small, but it's not massive, kind of also says that there isn't really a big opportunity in this space. As runners, as endurance athletes, I think we think it's a huge space and there's a lot of growth here, but from a tech platform standpoint, the reason Strava is the dominant player is because no one else has invested and come in and tried to, better that. All it would take was one company with a focused effort and a lot of capital, like any other market, like AI, social, like general social media for the past couple of years, any specific niche, you just get another player to come in with those types of budgets, that type of capital, and Strava's done. And I think investors also would see that and be a little concerned about that because it wouldn't take a lot to surpass Strava at this point. Um, and especially if you came in with a lot of capital, Strava's not gonna be able to buy it. And that's been their strategy since they bought it. Runna was probably the only other one that really competed with Strava a little bit differently, a little bit different focus what they had there, but it still had that social layer. But then Strava went and purchased them. So, that's been their strategy. So I'll keep my eye on Strava. I don't think I'm coming back. And again, I'll have a video next week about data and analytics and all of that good stuff. So stick around for that. The next topic I wanted to talk about was actually a post that I saw on Supwell's Instagram that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I love what Supwell does. I've deep respect for Joanna and everything he's built over there. Um, he's one of the creators I really look up to nowadays. And it's interesting because he started around a similar time than I did. I think about 6 months before I actually started the channel. But he's grown it in a very different direction than what I'm trying to do over here, and it's great. I really admire what he's built over there, and I love the Supwell Instagram feed. I think they do some amazing infographics and analytics. I was kind of bummed when I saw them really dive into that because that's what I was planning to do with my Instagram. I do that a little bit, but I think Supwell does it much better because they have a team over there that actually does everything. I'm just one solo creator over here, and that's what Sagasu Running is always going to be. But they posted an editorial that showed basically the Nike Alphafly 3 at the top, and then every other brand showing every other super shoe that every other brand has come out with since the Alphafly 3 launched back in 2023. And most brands have at least 3, some 5 or 6 different super shoes. And the point that they were making is like, haha, Nike sucks, blah, 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 like all that stuff we've seen. And I found it very disingenuous because Nike's actually released the Vaporfly 4 and the Streakfly 2, two other super shoes, two other really sort of genre-defining super shoes in those spaces. And the point is, Nike didn't need to release anything because the Alphafly 3 still is the standard. If you go to any marathon and you just look at the field, and I'm not talking the elite field, I'm just talking about the field, probably the shoe you're going to see most on runners' feet from everywhere from the fast runners up to much slower runners are Alphafly 3s. Alphafly 3 just works for a lot of people, and it is really the gold standard within marathon running shoes. Even this long, it's been a long time since that shoe was released. 2023. That's ancient history nowadays. And I'm not trying to defend Nike here. I do think they're lagging behind. I do think the fact they've only really released 2 shoes, now 3 with the Pegasus 2 in 2026, is an issue. I think Nike's gonna be fine, but obviously, I think they're trying to really figure out what's next, and that's why we've also seen the Alphafly 4 prototypes for so long, for over 2 years. I can't think of another shoe that I've seen as long in prototype. So I commented on that, and there was some dialogue in that comment. The thing again, the Alphafly 3 really is the standard in the industry. Every other shoe compares to that, and the industry even looks at it that way. The other thing about that infographic is there may have been 30 shoes on there. The Alphafly 3 was at the top, but of all of those super shoes that have come out from all those other brands, I would say 27 of them are just trash. They're not good shoes. There is only really 3 other shoes that are really relevant to talk about, in comparison to the Alphafly 3 that have come out since the Alphafly 3 launch. That's the Adidas Adios Pro 4. It's also the Adidas, Evo 3, and I think it's the Puma Fast R3, maybe the Deviate Nitro, Elite 4 as well, but that's kind of it. I think the Metaspeeds are in there, but I think someone looking at the Alphafly 3 is probably not looking at a Metaspeed, but I think the Metaspeeds are definitely up there as well. So let's say there's 5 shoes of those, say 30, 5 or 6 shoes. Um, but the rest are just not good. And just because a brand is putting out a bunch of shoes and most of them are not very good, doesn't mean that they're better. And then it gets into this whole like Nike's not innovative and the whole innovation thing. And like uh, every time I hear the word innovation, I kind of throw up in my mouth a little bit because I just that word aggravates me, not just in running shoes, but just in general in the world, because it's so overused. And really, I think it's just used as sort of a stopgap to say, without having to get in details, you just want to say more innovative. But when a brand becomes innovative, they try things, and innovation is trying new things, trying evolutions of ideas, current tech, and pushing that forward. It's not just Nike, it's any brand. Majority of the industry, majority of people just sort of pile on and say it sucks. So it's like there isn't a lot of incentive to do that really anywhere right now, including in running shoes. Occasionally, you'll get this breakthrough innovation that changes everything. Adidas Evo 3, the rim design. I saw some questions on that. I'll get to those in the Q&A. Groundbreaking. Puma Fast R3, groundbreaking for, I think, non-elite runners. Elite runners, it's a little bit mixed. Non-elite runners, groundbreaking. And I totally give it props for that. So it's like, but you're not going to get that every single shoe, every single generation. I think the Leaning Fadian 6 Elite is a really good example of that. Really interesting ideas in there, really interesting technology put together in a package that I think is really fantastic. And in many ways, it's, I think, what a lot of people always wanted the Alphafly to feel like, but that's actually the Fadian 6 Elite. So, you know, there's great super shoes out there. And I think the larger point is Nike isn't alone at the top anymore. They haven't been for quite some time. And they're coming in with the Alphafly 4 release into a very crowded space. But here's the point, the other point. The Alphafly 4 is going to be just fine. And it's going to be very successful. And it's going to become the standard of marathon racing shoes. Again, this fall, assuming that the Alphafly 4 comes out, but probably next spring or next fall, the majority of runners that you see in any marathon field or really any race, road race, will probably be an Alphafly 4s because it's just the sort of base neutral shoe that kind of works for everyone. And when they think about a fast, cool shoe that they want to put on their feet for their race, this really important event for them, that's going to be an Alphafly for most runners. I think that's fine. The other thing that I've talked about this a bit on the channel is I think a lot of people are comparing the Evo 3 to the Alphafly 4, and they're like, yeah, the Alphafly 4 is going to suck because the Evo 3. It's an apples to oranges comparison. It's not a direct comparison. The Evo 3 is an elite level shoe. The Alphafly 4 is going to be sort of a general consumer level shoe. There are rumors that Nike does have an elite level version of the shoe for next spring coming out. We'll see about that. But you can't compare the Alphafly 4 to the Evo 3. I think you're going to see podiums. I think you're going to see results for the Alphafly 4 from Nike Elites. But again, Nike's not as dominant as they were, but still, it is the baseline as far as feel and performance that a lot of the industry tries to go after and tries to better. And I think some shoes have kind of gotten there probably better. I think the Adios Pro 4 was a good example. I think the Adios Pro 5 is probably going to be up there. I think the Metaspeeds have gotten there, and I think the Metaspeed Ray in particular, I think has really pushed it further. But I think the Metaspeed Sky, the Tokyo series, is fantastic. But I think it's going to be fine. The bridge here to my next topic is, as far as Nike, as I mentioned earlier, I do think they're lagging behind. I'm not here saying like Nike's like, they've done no wrong. They're like in a perfect spot. I don't think they are. I actually think Nike's probably in the weakest spot that it's been in running since 2017. And if you remember 2016, 17, Nike was not in a strong spot in running. They were fine, and it was still Nike and Adidas, but Adidas was definitely, I think, more the dominant player when you thought of racing, marathon racing, results in racing. It was generally Adidas. There were some streaks. There's Flyknit. There were Nike products out there, but when the Vaporfly came out 2017, even the Rio Games in 2016, that changed everything. But when the 4% launched, that took Nike up to the top. And I've done a video on that. I'll find it and put a link in the show notes or description to that. But right now, Nike, I think, is not in a very strong position. I think they've been focused, and a lot of the industry's focused on this. They're moving to 18-month release cycles for shoes. I think Nike's done that. They've obviously been doing that for the past couple of years. That's why you've seen the Vaporfly and the Alphafly start to alternate years. The Pegasus and now the Vomero do that. And I think the lag that we're seeing in 2026 is probably some of that. They're probably shifting production schedules, and that's just how this stuff works. A lot of this stuff's planned out, 1.5 to 2 years in the past. So it's like by the time it hits the supply chains and whatnot, it's kind of old news. And you compound that with some of the market and some of Nike's struggles from the market standpoint. It looks like they're really, really in a bad spot. Like I said, I don't think they're in the best spot. I think they're in a fairly weak position, but I think they're going to be fine. I think the Alphafly 4 is going to be, again, quite successful. There's rumored other shoes coming out this fall beyond the Peg Plus 2. So I think Nike's going to be fine, but yeah, they're definitely not where they were, even I would say 3 months ago. So we'll see where that goes. All eyes. We should start to see some of the stuff fairly soon. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. This brings me to my next point related, the Nike Peg Plus 2. So I will be covering that shoe. However, I wasn't included in the initial batch of releases for that shoe. So all the creators that you saw that have their Peg Plus 2s, I wasn't included in that. A lot of that has to do with me being based here in Taipei. I'm just often, especially for Nike, not included in that stuff because of just the logistics and the shipping and everything to get me the shoes here. There are brands that do include me in that stuff, and you see me with launch day and those big embargo releases, but Nike's not one of them. So I will be covering the Peg Plus 2, but it's probably not going to be till September sometime because the release date for the Peg Plus 2 is here in Taiwan is sometime towards the mid to end of September. So it's not going to be till then that I start to talk about the shoe. So apologies for that, but I am going to be covering the shoe. But my first thoughts, my initial thoughts are, in some ways, I'm not surprised, and in other ways, I'm disappointed and I'm kind of bummed. Now, I'm not surprised because we've seen this shoe leaked for well over a year. This has been another heavily leaked shoe, but we haven't known some of the details. We know all of the details now, and I'll get to them a little bit, like a first pass here. But I, it's not a surprising shoe. Also, on my Instagram a couple months ago, I did some claim chowder on, I predicted that you would see a Pegasus with a AirPod in the forefoot a couple years ago. I think early 2024. I was talking about the future of the Pegasus and the future of the Alphfly, all that sort of stuff. I predicted that that shoe was coming. This is before we saw any leaks. It was obvious Nike was moving to put the AirPod in the Pegasus. The Pegasus platform is built around air. I think any shoe within Nike that has air attached to it, the Pegasus is probably the one that has the most connection to air at this point. I think in basketball, there's probably some shoes. I don't follow basketball that closely, but I think it's probably connected there as well. But in running and just general Nike, besides the Air Max, the Pegasus is probably the next most apparent shoe that's connected to air. So moving all three Nike shoes, Nike Pegasus to air makes total sense. That's where I think this shoe was so weird to me. This is the original Nike Peg Plus. I love this shoe. I've talked a lot about this shoe on the channel, but there's no air in this shoe. And while I loved what this shoe did, and I think what this shoe started with this simple shoe, one-piece midsole, all of that stuff I talked about endlessly on the channel, the fact that there was no air in this shoe was very, very strange because the Pegasus for years now has been air. They've been moving it more towards air. Yes, this is based off of the old Pegasus Turbo, but again, Nike's moved beyond that. They moved well beyond that. And, they moved the Pegasus completely to air. So to put AirPods in, and it's not really AirPods. It's not the same technology that's in the Alphafly. It's actually technology that's much closer to this. This is the Victory Spike, the Victory Track Spike. It's a unit more similar to this. It's not the same unit. It's actually literally the unit from this shoe. So this is the Peg Premium from last year. It's literally this Air Zoom unit, but it's only like this section. And what's funny is the mock-up I made of my like Peg Plus 2 a couple of years ago, I literally just in Photoshop took, this forefoot, stuck it on a Peg 41 at the time and said, that's what you're going to get. That's exactly what we got. But this Air Zoom unit really sort of proved the concept of curving, and the curve is what's really important here. This curve makes the shoe much more nimble. I love this shoe, but this shoe had its issues. Not everyone loved this shoe. But I think the Peg Plus 2 built on what they were trying to do with this shoe, but this was really proof of concept. And I think they really did it quite well. So it's not a surprising shoe. I'm not surprised. I completely expected it. Where I am disappointed is that there's now no longer a Pegasus like this, the Pegasus Plus. There is no longer just a all foam shoe. If I'm running in a Pegasus, I have to be running in air now. I don't have anything against air. I like it, but what's interesting about the Peg Plus 2 is it's kind of going counter to everything going on in the running industry right now. Every trend in the running industry right now, the Nike Pegasus Plus 2 represents sort of a complete hard counter to every one of those. We've seen the industry move more towards simpler shoes, one-piece midsoles with a lot of zonal foaming in them, more advanced foams. That's kind of now the norm, especially in the segment that the Peg Plus 2 is coming into. Peg Plus 2 kind of is not that at all. It's kind of the complete opposite. It's not a simple midsole. Though from an engineering and technological standpoint, Nike with Air Zoom is doing the same thing that other brands are doing with zonal foaming in the shoes, targeting specific zones for different feels. That's exactly what Nike does with Air Zoom. They're targeting a very specific section of the shoe, the forefoot, putting that curved Air Zoom. From an engineering standpoint, they think that is better than what you could do with foam. And my conversation with Elliot Heath in the spring around the Peg 42, we got into that a little bit, and he was sort of implying that's kind of where the direction's going. So Nike's doing the same thing, they're just doing it in a more complicated way. Another big trend that I've seen across the industry is I think drops have moved down to 6 to 8 mil. We've seen a lot of 6 mil drop shoes this year. The Pegasus Plus 2 at 10 mil, I don't really have a problem with drops, but I know a lot of runners do. Um, I can't think of many shoes that have come out this year with a 10 mil drop. I just think drops have lowered across the board this year, even in trainers, especially in trainers. So that's interesting. I also think from a weight standpoint, I was looking at the specs. According to Nike, the men's 9.5 is 270 grams, which means a US men's size 9 is probably about 255, 260 grams, somewhere in that range. Given Nike's weights, especially with the Vomeros, that's actually pretty good, but I still think the shoe could lose another 20, 30 grams, especially with some other shoes in the space, in the segment the Peg Plus 2 is coming into. So we'll see. We'll see. What I have heard, and I've been talking with someone who was part of the wear testing for the Pegasus Plus 2, and what he was telling me was that the shoe to compare the Pegasus Plus 2 the most to is a Zoomfly 6. That is the closest analog to the Peg Plus 2. It's not really the Peg Premium. It's not really the Tempo Next Percent, though I think on paper it looks like it's a replacement for the Tempo Next Percent. It's not. The feel of it is much more Zoomfly 6. Obviously, though, without the plate. But the thing about the curved plate, and if you ever ran in the Nike Pegasus Premium, is you know that this shoe structurally was a lot more rigid than you expected. There wasn't a plate in this shoe. All the structure and the stiffness of this midsole comes from the plate and comes from the top and bottom and the structuralness of the Air Zoom unit. That's actually in the Pegasus Plus 2 in the forefoot. Now, another shoe that I think is a good example is this, the Vomero Premium. If you ran in this shoe, this is a huge stack of foam, but these Air Zoom units, especially the one in the forefoot, give your foot something to react to. If this was just, 40 plus mil of foam in the forefoot, you would just sink in and get lost. And I think other real kind of recovery shoes that have just been a big chunk of mushy foam, they're fun for a little bit and then they become unfun very quickly because they're just mushy. You just get lost in all that foam. Adding this Air Zoom unit, and again, this is a different type of unit, put some structure into the forefoot of the shoe, put some structure into the heel of the shoe, and made all of this foam, I think, feel a lot more lively than it would have otherwise. And this isn't meant to be a fast or lively shoe. This is a recovery shoe. But putting an Air Zoom unit and the structuralness of it, especially with the curve, especially in the forefoot, is going to make that shoe feel much more rolling and much more aggressive off the forefoot. For those of you who love the Alphafly, you probably will really dig that shoe. As far as the use case for it, I'm seeing a lot of people saying that's not really for fast running because it's too heavy, the drop's too high, all the same stuff that we hear all the time. But Jakob Ingebrigtsen doesn't seem to mind. It's like he seems to do very well in the Peg Plus 2 and all the training and all his Instagram and all the stuff that we saw from Jakob in his build up to his 5K win recently. He was generally in the Peg Plus 2 and he was doing a lot of different stuff in there. We saw him doing reps in the Peg Plus 2. So it's a shoe that's going to work for fast running. Even though I think some reviewers are saying it's not, it is, and that's its intent. I also think the Peg Plus 2 with this form factor becomes sort of the default Pegasus now. I think the Peg 42 is sort of shifted a little bit down market. I think that truly becomes entry level. It's not the all-arounder I think it's meant to be, or it once was. It still can be used that way, but I think from a marketing standpoint, the Peg Plus 2 is now the marquee Pegasus. As someone who loves a Peg, I'm a little sad about that because I love the default Pegasus. But I think from a market and just people getting excited about what the shoe looks like and how it connects to the race shoe, the connection between the Pegasus Plus 2 and the Alphafly is undeniable. I think that's super important. And if you look at any other brand, you look at their sort of premier performance trainer, the Evo SL, the uh, Deviate Plus from Puma. There's a few others out there. It looks like their premier um, super shoe. Nike hasn't really had that because the Vomeros aren't really intended to be that. They don't really have air in them. The only one that has air in them is the Vomero Premium, which is a recovery shoe. It's not meant to be sort of an all-around trainer, though it does a lot pretty well beyond recovery, but it's not something you're going to be doing all your training in. So to have that Peg Plus 2 that looks as exciting and as fun and as cool, and it's got the same tech that registers with their Premier Super Shoe, makes total sense. So I see why Nike's gone there. So I'm looking forward to covering this shoe. I may have some unique content around it towards the end of September. We'll see. There's a lot of things sort of in the air right now for Nike and content and stuff. I've got a lot of sort of emails out there and trying to get some stuff lined up. But it's I think it's going to be a shoe that's not going to be on anyone's top of the year list, but I think it's going to be a shoe that I think if you enjoy it, you're really going to enjoy it. I'm going to sneeze, so I'm going to pause. Didn't happen. Just got that tickle. I think the Peg Plus 2 is going to do well-ish, but in the shoe tube space and like the space that we're in, I think a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, Nike sucks still. I don't think it's going to change them. The thing that I mentioned that the Peg Plus 2 feels like the Zoomfly 6, I think that's where people are going to kind of enjoy the shoe, because the Zoomfly 6 from Nike, when that came out a couple years ago, was the first Nike that I think everyone sort of reacted to that wasn't an Alphafly or a Vaporfly that people loved, and it got a lot of positive coverage. A Nike shoe getting positive coverage in this space, imagine that. But the Zoomfly 6 was that shoe. And it got a lot of people excited. A lot of people who never paid attention to Nike tried that shoe out, and they fall in love with that shoe. Now, that was a tempo trainer, a plated trainer, wasn't meant to be an all-arounder. The Peg Plus 2 is really building on that. And again, that's where it was really interesting hearing this wear tester kind of imply to me that he felt like the shoe felt a lot like a Zoomfly 6. That wasn't the official thing that Nike was telling the wear testers, but that's what he was feeling running in that shoe. So that sounds pretty cool. I think that should make a lot of people actually kind of really enjoy the shoe. But again, it's not going to be on anyone's top of the year list this year, I think. So I will be covering it, but probably not till September. Moving on to my final topic, and these three are kind of connected, is I have gotten bitten by the trail running bug again. Now, I am not a trail runner. I am a runner, and I like to run on everything. I don't consider myself a dedicated trail runner. If anything, I'm more of a road runner, but I love trail running. But I go through these phases where it's like I get really into it, and then it's like I'm not so into it. I'm really focused on road running, and then I get back into it. Well, I'm back into trail running quite heavily. The thing that really instigated this was that many years ago, like 20 years ago, I had a pretty severe back injury from a car accident I was in. And for a couple of years after the accident, again, this was like 20 years ago, I had a lot of back problems, a lot of lower back problems specifically. And then I rehabbed it, all kind of went away. But every, I don't know, 8 or so years, I come back a couple times, my lower back starts to bother me. And about 3 weeks ago, it started to come back. Not severe, it's not like taking me out of action, but it's enough that I'm aware of my lower back. And I found that road running, which is this like repetition, like just this repetitive, like same motion, really, my back did not like road running. It didn't matter. The shoe could be max cushion, could be low cushion, could be no cushion. Didn't matter. My back just did not like road running. But trail running, no problem. So I started to go up on the trails, started running, and I got really bitten by it. I really, 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 really enjoyed trail running. And it makes me realize every time I'm up on the trails, and I'm going to say up on the trails, like there's a mountainside right here. If I go to the top of that mountain, I have a trail group up there that's about probably about 10K of trails, mostly all technical trail running. There's not a lot of flat, kind of smooth sections up there. It's a lot of technical, rocky, rooty, muddy stuff, but it's fun. I love it. I love being up there. So I've been doing a lot of trail running. You saw a trail review. The Mountain Coast M1 came out on the channel last Sunday. Fun shoe. I think that's probably one of probably the best Mountain Coast to date. They put out some great shoes, but I think the M1 really encompasses everything Mountain Coast has been trying to do. Really great package, really great foam, a really fun foam. But I'm testing some other trail shoes. You'll see next weekend there'll be a trail shoe, which is kind of good timing given that next week is UTMB. Um, Even if I'm not paying attention to trail running, I always make a point to watch UTMB Chamonix because that's just to me like the race. I love that race. I also kind of pay attention to Western states in the U.S., but UTMB Chamonix is like the race. I pay attention to race week, and that's where you generally see a lot of the advancement. The Western states in the past, I'd say 5 years, has also seen a lot of the technical advancements as well, probably more, frankly. A lot of the innovation we've seen in the trail running space has been out of Western states, specifically the needs of Western states. So it's it's interesting how that shifts around. But I'm paying attention to UTMB, and you'll see trail content this fall. I've got at least 3 or 4 other trail shoe reviews coming out in the next month to 2. I'm going to space them out over the fall. Maybe up to 6. It depends. We'll see what actually shows up. But I'm really loving trail running. But for my back specifically, I can go up and run on trails, and my back doesn't bother me. In fact, my back feels better after a trail run. And I just think it's the fact that it's not just all the same repetitive movement like road running is. It's much more dynamic, especially all the technical trail running that I have. I'm just moving around. I'm getting more flexible. I'm kind of just working all the stiffness out of my body. It's just great. So like the trails have been my rehab for my back and just trying to make it feel better. Yeah, I did a road run yesterday. Felt great. No problems, but I do notice my back's a little sore today. But I slept kind of strange last night too. So it's like, so we'll see. We'll see. But the back thing is not serious, but it's pushed me back to the trails, and I'm paying attention to trails. And the last point before I get to the Q&A is that next week is UTMB Chamonix, and we're going to see the Sydney Marathon, the first fall world major, the new world major. So it's going to be kind of big. There's going to be a lot of shoe stuff to talk about, a lot of advancements. I would not expect to see a ton of new stuff that we haven't already seen from UTMB. There may be a couple of surprises, and I know there's some embargoed stuff that I don't know if it's public or not that will be released. But there'll be some stuff coming out of the trail side, and I expect that we'll see some new prototypes in Sydney, but I don't think we're going to see any big releases from anyone. I think the big Adidas releases are going to be for Berlin, and that's the normal release for them. And I think Nike at this point probably is targeting Chicago. I think they're probably going to go really make a concerted effort for the sub 2 hour, really the sub 1:59:30 mark at Chicago, because that's sort of the Nike race. So I think Berlin and Chicago are going to be quite interesting races because both courses, given the weather, assuming the weather's good, could be very fast, and they could go for that sub 1:59:30, which is now the mark that the world is going for. So it's going to be an interesting fall. We're going to see some interesting shoes. So plenty of racing ahead. Plenty of racing breeds shoe innovation. So cool stuff. So with that, that's everything I wanted to talk about. Let's go into some Q&A. I've seen some really interesting questions that I wanted to get into. So scrolling back up to chat and going through them. So first question I saw was looking at the Peg Plus 2. Could you talk about that shoe overall, how you feel about it, and when you expect a video coming soon? I think I covered that, but I'm I'm excited. I'm not excited. I think it makes sense. And I will be covering the shoe, but probably not till mid to late September because that's when it actually releases here in Taipei, Taiwan, where I live. So plenty of thoughts coming on that shoe. I will be running that shoe, and I just spent about 15 minutes talking about it. So go back in the VOD. If you're watching the VOD, eventually there'll be a chapter you can go to that. But yes, we'll be talking about the Pegasus 2 on this channel. This was a question I saw at the start of the show that I wanted to get back to. It's Dial Goplin, someone who comments all the time in these live streams. Again, thank you for being out there. One question I have is with the Adidas plans for the new rim, so the EnergyRim concept instead of a plate, and what that means for amateur runners instead of just weight. Now, I've done videos talking about the rim. I'll do another one once we know much more about it. We only got the most basic coming out of the Evo 3 release. And by the way, I'm still trying to get an Evo 3. I've got a request to Adidas for one of those. They said they heard me. So as soon as there's more, I'll try to get that. And eventually I'll be doing the Evo 3 versus sort of Adios Pro 5. And I think the Takumi Sen 12 as well. I think the rim's in that shoe. So I think what the rim does, and this is what I talked about in the video I did on it, on the Evo 3 video, and I'll again put a link in the description to that video if you want to see it. I think from a technical standpoint, it now puts a lot more emphasis on a super shoe's foam than just the plate, because now with the rim around the edge of the shoe, there's only foam between your foot and the ground. And I think that's going to change how a super shoe works for a lot of runners. Now, I think elite runners are going to benefit a lot from that. And I think that's why we saw the Evo 3 do so well when it was released at London. Again, really great athletes, not to take anything away from the athletes, but like you're putting very advanced foams and what's called zonal foaming in those areas. So now brands can really target very specific areas of the foam, really build that up and really mold that very specifically to give a very specific feel. And I think that's going to benefit elite runners because they're going to really be able to maximize that now. You're still going to get the stability and the snap of carbon from the rim. And I think it's going to be more of a stability element now. But again, through the length of the shoe, you're still getting the snap. But off the toe, you're not going to get that sort of propulsive carbon feel that I think a lot of runners have gotten used to. Now, as far as amateur runners, I think it's going to be a little bit more mixed. I think a lot of people are going to try the Adios Pro 5 and they're going to struggle. And again, this is something I talk about on the channel all the time, the importance of foot strength, the importance of understanding your mechanics. You know, everything I talked about with the Metasleek from ASICS, I think that's why a shoe like the ASICS Metasleek is so important because it's training mechanics, it's training foot strength. You're learning how to get a kick, how to toe off. And I think a lot of runners who have started in maybe the past, 5-6 years, they don't have that because they've never needed to develop that because all the shoes they've been running on have been big and bouncy and rolling. They've had full carbon plates. They've had air zoom units like the Alphafly 3. I think the Alphafly 3 is a really good example of this. You can just put that shoe on, not worry about your mechanics, and the shoe's going to kind of do the job for you because the air zoom units are going to bounce you forward. The carbon plate in that shoe is going to roll you forward. You just never needed to pay attention to your mechanics. I think the Adios Pro 3, even though it has energy rods, which function a little different than a plate, still kind of did that. I think this is why you saw a lot of runners struggle with the Adios Pro 4, because you put those rods in a softer foam, it requires your foot to have a lot of foot strength to actually activate that shoe. Elite runners have that. Non-elite runners generally don't, especially if they've started in the past few years. So I think from an amateur runner, non-elite runner standpoint, I think the EnergyRim is going to be a little challenging. However, I think it is going to ultimately be better overall. And I think people, once they adjust to it, will understand like, okay, now we're getting really tailored performance around the foam for the shoe. So all the advancements we're seeing in these non-plated performance trainers, like the Evo SL, though that's not the most advanced shoe, but like where trainers have moved with like simple constructions, one-piece midsole, foam that's really zoned out and molded specifically for, functions in zones of the midsole, that's now going to transition into super shoes. And I think ultimately, once those combine, once runners get a couple training cycles into them, I think they're going to be fine. And I think they're going to see, like, okay, now I really feel the ground. I feel my mechanics. I understand how the shoe's working. I understand how my foot's working. I think you're just going to have better runners. But the transition from carbon plated shoes exclusively is going to be tough. I think some people are going to struggle with that. And what's interesting is, like, the Puma Fast R3 is sort of the opposite ends of the spectrum of the Evo 3. The Evo 3 is really putting emphasis on foot strength, mechanics, really understanding, developing a kick off the toe, where the real kind of killer app of the Fast R3, the thing that made that shoe stand out so much for non-elite runners, is you didn't need a kick. That shoe gave you a kick. The cantilevered carbon plate in front of the toe brought a kick. So if you've been a runner who's never had a kick, you've just been bouncing from whatever super shoe you've been in, and you put on the Fast R3, the reason that shoe felt so incredible and was so fast is because now you have a kick. You never had a kick. Now you do. You're not going to get that in the Evo 3. You're not going to get that in the Adios Pro 5. It's going to be much more of a subtle thing. And I think runners who have trained for it, and what's also interesting is Adidas's overall running lineup is moving towards foams that are much more emphasizing foot strength and flexibility and lower leg strength, and really not necessarily working on mechanics, but developing foot strength. The Hyperboost Edge and some other shoes that are coming are definitely building on that. And I think Adidas knows this. I think ASICS has been down this route as well. And I think they're definitely going out with the Metasleek. I think the Hyperspeed. I think a lot of the changes in the Nova Blast 6 are trying to emphasize this to make the Metaspeeds, especially the Metaspeed Ray, work a little bit better for more runners. But again, we're in a bit of a transition because I think we are going to see more of this stuff. And I think amateur and non-elite runners are going to struggle a little bit with it. But over time, I think it's just going to make for stronger runners, better runners, and runners who actually understand their running mechanics. And yeah, there's going to be tons of runners out there who don't care. They just want a shoe that feels fast. And there's going to be those options. I think the Alphafly 4 is going to be a great option for that. I think Puma's Fast R platform is going to be a great option for that. There's definitely options out there, but I think it's interesting that Adidas is going its own path. Not that they always haven't. The energy rods were definitely different than a plate. So I think it's interesting where Adidas has gone. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see where it's developing. I think the shoe where the EnergyRim is going to be the best, possibly, is the Takumi Sen 12. I didn't think much of the Takumi Sen 11. That's why I didn't cover it. But the 12, if it has the EnergyRim in it, and I think it does, and depending on where the foams go, the 12 could be special. The Takumi Sen 12 could be, I think, the Adidas shoe of the year. Maybe not better than the Evo 3, but I think it's going to be really exciting. And I actually think the Takumi Sen 12 could maybe be a little bit better than the Adios 10. We'll see. I plan on covering all those shoes. And I saw a question about the Adios 10 a little bit further down. But I think Adidas has some really interesting stuff coming out. And that's why on my tier list for running brands, I think Adidas and ASICS right now are in a league of their own. I think Puma did some interesting stuff last year. I don't think they've done as interesting stuff this year. And I think Nike has the whole legacy of that. I think we need to see where they're going next. And we're going to start to see that this fall. But Adidas and ASICS right now are in just a league of their own as far as what they're doing, what they're playing with, their materials, their foams, their engineering. Brilliant. Jay Gorner, most stable racing shoe. Well, I got a couple questions about the Ultra Vanish Carbon and their new update, all the stuff that's with that. That's probably going to be a stable shoe, but I think the most stable super shoe that's actually a real super shoe that's super, I don't think that's an Ultra, is the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 or 5. I think that is going to be your best bet if you value a super shoe and you want a super feel in your super shoe, but you want as much stability as you can possibly get. The Endorphin Pro. The 4 is great. The 5 makes it a little bit less stable, not a lot, but it makes it more super, makes it more energetic, more super shoe-like, where the Endorphin Pro 4 was a super shoe that kind of felt more like a super trainer, but it was still super fast. I think the Endorphin Pro is probably your most stable option. Beyond that, it's tough because like the whole point of a racing shoe, a super shoe, is it's neutral. So stability is not something that's generally built into racing shoes. I think the Asics Yogiri S4. I know there was just a new update to that, a new release. I know it's out in Japan. I assume it's out globally. That's going to be a stable option for you if you can find that one. I don't have a lot of super shoes over there right now, but yeah, super shoes in general are by their nature not meant to be stable. But again, I think above and beyond all other super shoes, the Endorphin Pro series, especially the 4 and now the 5, that is your shoe if you want stable. George Pardo 7866, greetings from Mexico and amigos all over the world. I see you here all the time. You comment on everything. I appreciate you. Thank you for popping in. Access 10_75, also to the Peg Plus 2 and the Alphafly 4. What do you think Nike will have next in the line? That's the big question, right? Like, where does Nike go? Now we've seen the Peg Plus 2. We know the Alphafly 4 is coming. We kind of have a sense 95% of what that shoe is. What's next for Nike? There's a bunch of rumors. There's a bunch of things we've seen leaked, and there's a bunch of things that have been rumored as far as leaks, though we haven't really seen them. Or maybe we've seen them, but we didn't know what we were looking at. And that's been sort of the story with Nike leaks recently is they've been out there, but we didn't know what they were because it's just Nike. It's interesting because Nike right now with their leaks is really blurring the line between lifestyle and performance. So we're seeing some shoes being sort of leaked as lifestyle shoes, but it turns out that they're actually performance shoes. It's interesting. They're kind of trying to like camouflage it somehow. And I think that's very intentional by Nike. It's a smart play. But the two things that I think we know are coming is some sort of elite level shoe in the spring. That got a name in this about 6 months ago. It is an Alphafly. We'll see. I'm not convinced the Alphafly is the platform for that elite level shoe. I think it's more the Vaporfly, though. The Vaporfly 5 leaks that we've seen, I have to say I'm a little bit on the fence about what I'm seeing right now from that. But again, just because we're seeing leaks right now doesn't mean that's going to be the final release. But we should see an elite level racer from Nike. We've also seen rumors. We haven't seen this shoe. At least I don't think we've seen this shoe, though maybe again in that blurred performance lifestyle thing, we have seen this shoe in leaks. There is a rumored non-plated, non-air, single piece of foam performance trainer from Nike, performance shoe. Something like a Streakfly 1, kind of Nike's take on an Evo SL, DVA Pure, something in that realm. I think we're going to see that. Beyond that, I just think we're going to see a doubling down on what Nike already established with the Vomero. We've already seen leaked Vomero 19s out there, though there's been nothing about the Vomero Plus 2. So I think we're just going to see more of the same. I think it's going to be interesting where Nike actually positions the Peg Plus 2 and the future of the Zoomfly, because the gap that Nike's had is the tempo trainer. The Zoomfly is really meant to be between the daily trainer and the super shoe. That's been the Zoomfly. And for some people, it was the Streakfly, but now the Streakfly 2 is truly a race shoe. It's not something you're going to really be training in other than speed work. So if the Peg Plus 2 fills that spot and there isn't an update to the Zoomfly, we'll see. Or if we actually do see Air come to the Zoomfly or Tempo Next Percent, I guess 3 at this point, because there was a 2 that went out and then it was canceled, and then you saw it in some outlet stores for a little bit. There was a big shift in Nike's direction about 2.5 years ago, and I think that shoe was caught up in it. So there could be a new tempo trainer as well, but we'll see where the Peg Plus 2 actually ends up. But it's going to be interesting. But I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to be genre defining from Nike. I just think they're going to build on materials, engineering, and continue to push performance. Um, and again, I think in the shoe tube space, you're going to see a lot of people saying Nike's done, Nike's not innovative. But I think the real thing is in the details, and I think Nike's really focused in on engineering details. Whether or not that's going to pay off for them or not, it always has in the past. We'll see moving forward. But I think Nike, like I said earlier in this live stream, I think they're probably in the weakest position they've been in a long time. I think the Alphafly 4 is going to be a good shoe for them, but I don't think it's going to solve their problems. And I think we need to see what's next. I do expect a new Zoom X next year. I don't think it's going to be in the Alphafly 4. I do expect next generation of whatever's coming after Zoom X, whether it's a new formulation of Zoom X or it's Zoom X2 or Swoosh X, I don't know, some new foam. I do expect to see that next year in some form, especially if we're going to see the elite level shoe. I just think we need to. So those are my thoughts on where Nike's going in the future. Dale Goplan, can't wait for summer to be over here in Georgia, state, not country. So Georgia, US. Did a half last week and 102 heat index and was worse than my full marathon. So yeah, I think everyone is done with summer running right now, especially with a lot of places from just being dry and hot earlier in the summer to now just being like there's just rain and flooding everywhere and dew points are super high. Like I said in the intro to the show, here in Taipei, we're now in autumn based on the lunar calendar, and autumn here means the humidity goes from like high to like extremely high. So the humidity right now in this room is 92%. So I have a fan blowing on me. It's just hot and humid. I think everyone's over that right now. So yes, I think everyone's over that. Luckily for most places, September starts to like chill that out. Maybe not Georgia. You won't really see relief until October, if that. But at least the Northeast and a lot of the U.S. side will start to see a little relief, at least in mornings in September. And we're getting there, so hang in there. Always remember, though, January running, especially in the Northeast, maybe not so much in Georgia, but in the Northeast of the U.S., those cold, snowy, below 0 days, remember summer. That's all I'm going to say. It's like both extremes are rough, but I will always take the hot over the cold. That's just me. Ramrod Smothers, great name, by the way. I struggle with forefoot width in racing shoes, and the new Ultra Vanish Carbon has my eye. Do you have any thoughts on recent updates to that shoe? No. I'm not a fan of Ultra. I don't really pay attention to Ultra. I don't think Ultra is really relevant at all. Engineering, materials, geometries, sorry, they're just not. That's just me. I do think if you are someone who looks for the wider shoe, I think Ultra and Topo are probably your best two bets. Topo is another brand I'm not super excited about. Don't have a lot of good things to say. But I know the Topo shoes have also been getting a lot of buzz right now. So those are going to be your best options for wide racing shoes or super shoes. But again, like I was saying earlier, a super shoe's design is meant to be neutral and performance oriented, and performance running shoes are meant to fit tighter. The whole wide forefoot thing, blah, 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 all that stuff, that goes counter to everything about a performance racing shoe or even a performance shoe. You're just never going to see it. Ultra tries, Topo tries, I get it, cool, but just the nature of a racing shoe is not, you do not want a ton of room in that shoe, especially in the midfoot and the heel, which is the problem that Ultra and Topo have because they use kind of a straight last. So like the midfoots are generally really sloppy fitting in those shoes, which is why I don't really like them or pay attention to them. But You just don't see that. I mean, as far as wide super shoes, super shoes that work for wider feet, I think Saucony is a good place to look. Mostly, maybe less because of the last, but because there's so much stability in that shoe that if your foot's spilling over the midsole a little bit because you have a really wide foot, you're still going to have a very stable experience. I think Brooks is another good example, though Brooks's super shoes are not like, the tip of the spear, but I think they're probably some of your best bets. Beyond that, there just isn't a lot of options. I mean, if you love Ultra, you're an Ultra fan, the Vanish Carbon is going to be your best, widest carbon plated shoe. I don't think it's the best carbon plated shoe out there. I don't think it's even close. I think it's super trainer level at best, but still, that's going to be your best bet. Philip Watts Q5R Saucony Endorphin Speed 6 revealed. Power MPB X stick with PIBA, not Incrediron Lux. Saucony and Zura Plus released in China instead of two foam Incrediron. So two things there with Saucony. I saw the Power Run PBX and I saw that it was a separate path from Incrediron and Incredilux. As I've said many times on this channel, I do not think Incrediron is the future for Saucony. And I think they've made a big mistake investing as much effort into it as they have because it doesn't work. I know there's people out there that love it. I see in the comments. I know I'll see in the comments on this live stream podcast. Incrediron just isn't it. Power Run PB is a proven foam, but like Nike's Zoom X, Power Run PB needs to be updated. They need to be whatever the future is. That leak where we saw Power Run PBX and then the details around it, I don't know how credible it is, but I do think the basis of it is true. I do think it seems like Saucony is pushing forward with a future version of Power Run PB. So we'll see what that is. I think that's a good move from them. As far as the Azura Plus being a mix of Incrediron and Power Run PB, I am going to try to cover that shoe. I'm trying to get a pair. I have my doubts because I think one of the things that makes the Azura so good is the firmness of the platform. It took Saucony almost 7 years to make a Power Run PB shoe that really fully worked with Power Run PB, and that was the Azura. And it was fantastic. I think by putting Incrediron in there, it's going to make it a different shoe. It may not be awful, but it's not going to be what the Azura is. So I want to get a pair of Azura Pluses. I am going to do that versus. I'm going to do that comparison because the Azura is in the running of shoe of the year for me. So I need to cover that shoe, and I'm curious about that. But I do not have a lot of hope for the Azura Plus. But we'll see. We'll see. Open mind when I come into review. Always come in with an open mind. Rumble 2276, the Vanish Carbon 3 from Altra looks nice. It's the first Ultra performance shoe where it looks like they're actually trying. Sure. Trying though. Okay. Cool. I do agree. Styling wise, it's the best looking Ultra, the most relevant to the current running market Ultra that I've seen. And it does look like it is an advancement over previous versions of the Vanish Carbon, but still, it's not really relevant within the space. And if you don't need a super wide shoe, even the B tier super shoes out there are going to be way better than that shoe. So just keep that in mind. Wasabi watches. How would you suggest when someone should move to carbon? So if you're looking for your first carbon racing shoe, first carbon plated shoe, I've talked about this a bunch. I think it's when you're ready, you're ready. I know there's a lot of people out there that say that, a slower runner doesn't benefit from a carbon plated shoe. I don't agree. I think every runner benefits from a carbon plated shoe for the use case of a carbon plated shoe, for racing, for some tempo training, some faster running, some workouts. I think if you want to run in a carbon plated shoe, just get a carbon plated shoe. I don't think there's any you have to be this fast to get a carbon plated shoe. I just think you need to have at least some feel for your mechanics in your foot, and some level of foot strength, to move over there. But if you're looking for a carbon plated shoe for racing or fast workouts, just go for it. I think every runner benefits from a carbon plated shoe. The faster you are, the more you benefit. But I think even the slowest runner, and if we're talking like 5, 6 hour plus marathon times, maybe not as much. You're probably better off in something like a Mega Blast or a Super Blast. There's a ton of other shoes out there that are probably better off for you. But if you wanted to run a 5 hour marathon on a carbon plated shoe, you're still going to benefit because I think you're getting some of the snap, you're getting the stability, you're getting the leg savingsness and just the mechanical leverness of the plate that's helping you. You're going to benefit from it. You're just not getting the big boost from a speed standpoint that a 2 hour marathoner might be getting or a 3 hour marathoner. But you're still benefiting. As far as a newer runner training in your first carbon plated shoe, go slowly. Do not do a ton of running in it. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun, but do not like go all in and just only run in that shoe. Your Achilles, your calves are going to let you know. So like with any new thing you're integrating into your running, whether it's a low stack shoe or a flexible shoe, go easy, little by little, do one run a week in it, do the volume of that one run by like 50%. If you feel any weird soreness, any new stiffness anywhere, stop, go back to your normal shoes. Just ease it in slowly. Go slowly with it. But I think it's pretty easy to integrate in. Tony Swarcarzo 3477, any Adios 10 comments? Yeah, I talked about it a little bit. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be hard to one up the Adios 9 because the Adios 9 was perfection. I cannot comment how perfect that shoe is. Design, aesthetics, geometry, engineering, the foam, perfect. So if the Adios 10 is a Adios 9 with a new style, with the updated design language, great. That's going to be a great shoe. If it's evolving the Adios platform a little bit, which I think it is based on what I've seen of it, cool. I'm just curious where that's going to go. And I said earlier in the podcast live stream that I think this year, because of the EnergyRim design from Adidas, I think the Takumi Sen 12 may be the shoe to look for. Again, the EnergyRim going around the edges, the outside of the shoe, puts all of the foam between your foot and the ground. So there's no plate, there's no rod. So you're running directly on foam. So the foot feel of the Takumi Sen 12 versus an Adios 10 could be very similar, but if you're getting the stability and the sort of propulsiveness of carbon from the rim, that might be the cooler shoe. Now, as a training partner, as a shoe to develop foot strength and all the stuff I talk about a lot on this channel, yes, the Adios 10 should be great, assuming that it's using the same sort of shank in the midfoot, all that sort of stuff. I wish they would remove the shank from that shoe, kind of like what the Asics Metasleek did. But Adidas loves their midfoot torsion control, so I just don't see that happening. But fingers crossed there's no shank in the Adios 10. That's a detail we don't know. But we'll see. We'll see. But I think it should carry on what the 9 did, but I think the 9 is perfect. So the 10 has a lot to follow up on. Manny655321, who's also a subscriber on the channel. Thank you for that. Puma Velocity Nitro 5 plus Asics Metasleek plus Mizuno Hyperwarp Pure/Elite solid rotation for lower stack enjoyers. Yeah, you got some expensive shoes in there, but yeah, I mean, I think you could also go Puma Velocity Nitro 5, Adidas Adios 9. I think the Hyperwarp Elite from Mizuno is a great option. I don't think you need to spend for the Pure. I think a Vaporfly 4 also goes in there. I think a Fast R3 actually goes in there pretty well, pretty nicely. Yeah, no, I think that's a great rotation. The Hyperwarps are probably the best option there. The Elite's a great shoe. I think the Pure is the more exciting one, but I don't think everyone needs to spend for the Pure. And honestly, another shoe that might fit in there is the Asics Metaspeed Ray. I know I've been saying I have a review coming out for that shoe soon. I do have a review coming out for that shoe soon. Even though that is a very high stack shoe, it's under the 40 mil stack height limit. It runs, because of how soft the foam is, it runs a lot lower and it requires a lot of foot strength. So it's interesting because it is a max stack to the World Athletics Super Shoe limits, but it feels like it's lower than it actually is. So that's another good option. Boulder just entered the chat from Stevie76 as a dating app. Strava, farmers only, farmers only, the whole meme around that and the whole sort of dating app. And I know Strava in Boulder and the surrounding area is sort of the same thing. You're getting that kind of runner, endurance athlete, influencer thing. I get it. And interestingly, that's where Strava is based. So that's probably the most passionate fans for Strava are probably in the Boulder area and specifically using Strava like a dating app. Maybe that's a pivot for Strava. Maybe if another player comes in, Strava could pivot to being runners only or cyclists only or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's a future product path for Strava. We'll see. Li Mazarlik. Alphafly 1 is still my favorite. 3 new pairs in the box. Should serve me well for quite a while. I mean, if you love it, you love it. I enjoyed the Alphafly 1, but I much, much, much prefer the Alphafly 3. A much better shoe. I think just much better Alphafly. Alphafly 2, we just never need to talk about. The Air Kipchoge, really the shoe that was designed for Eliud Kipchoge and only really works for Eliud Kipchoge. We don't need to talk about that shoe, but I know the Alphafly 1 has its fans. Thing I'll say is those new pairs of Alphafly 1s in the box, I mean, that's a shoe from 2019, 2020, depending on when you bought it, maybe 2021. I would check them. I would make sure you open the box, keep them stored in a dry area. If there's any humidity and you have a dehumidifier, keep that around where those shoes are stored. Keep them out of UV light, which in a box should not be a problem. But ZoomX foam is 5-6 years old. I've noticed, because I have a pair of Alphafly 1s stored over there in a box with some Vaporfly Next Percents and Next Percent 2s. And I've noticed the foam in those is a little bit firmer than I remember it. And I'm in a super humid area here, but they're stored out of UV light. But air your shoes out. They're not going to stay fresh forever. ZoomX, I think, is starting to age. And I think the 5-6 year mark is where that starts to age. So if you bought those Alphafly 1s in 2021, 2022, you should be okay. You're probably okay, but just keep an eye on them. They might not last as long as you think they're going to last. With Bacon, great screen name there. Great Brofist as well on your avatar. I remember how revelatory Air was for Nike in the late 80s versus crude EVA. Are Air units still helpful in this age of super foams? Yes. Air Zoom that you see in the Alphafly and now the Peg Plus 2, completely different technology. Other than the name, the product name of Air, has nothing to do with Nike Air of old, especially the 80s Nike Air. I think it's relevant. Nike obviously think it's relevant. It's doing all of the same engineering things that other brands are doing with zonal mapping in their midsoles. Nike's doing that mechanically with Air Zoom around foam and creating a cavity for Air Zoom. Nike sees advantages in there. It's not just the product name and the IP that they own for that's involved, but they obviously see performance gains from Air Zoom. So yes, I would say there is. I think if you run in an Alphafly 3, you know how bouncy and fun that is. The only shoe that really comes close to that feel is the Li-Ning Feidian 6 Elite. It's got that same bouncy Alphafly feel, but that's because of the Super Boom capsule in there, which is essentially doing the same thing an Air Zoom capsule is doing, just with different tech. And I did a video talking about that, and go back on the channel for that one. But yes, I do think Air Zoom is still relevant. Is it the best solution? I don't know. I think with ATPU foams and how those can be tuned now, I think the tuning that you can do in a single piece ATPU midsole is far beyond anything we've seen in the past. And if I had to say from my gut, I'd say it's probably better than what Air Zoom allows. But Air Zoom, I think, still offers some advantages. And again, Nike Engineering definitely sees that there's advantages there. So yes, I do think it's still relevant. We'll see where Nike pushes it. Make triathlon great again. Why do you think Nike is taking so long to release the Alphafly 4? It's been since 2023. Yeah, I think there's two things there. First one is I think they know they have to get this one right, or they know they have to not mess up the Alphafly 3, but they have to provide enough of a advancement of the Alphafly, just like there was a jump from Alphafly 2 to Alphafly 3, but still not destroying and messing up the Alphafly 3, because the Alphafly 2 from the 1 really messed up the Alphafly 1. They don't want to repeat that. So I think Nike knows they need to nail it with this shoe. But also I think there's been some indecision. It seems like with not only the length of prototypes of the Alphafly 4, but the distinct different versions of prototypes and leaks. I think I went back and counted at least 4, possibly 5 very distinctly different paths for the Alphafly 4 prototypes. That also speaks to me that there's been some indecision. Like they're not sure. They're not sure what's best, which again is not a Nike problem they had in the past. And I think that combines with the first point that they know they need to get this right. They know the market's looking at this to be like spot on. So they're really taking their time with this. So I think that's what's contributed to the Alphafly 4 length. But the other thing is the Alphafly 3 still is the gold standard for a marathon racing shoe, and they've not needed to update it. So I don't think that's even really being subjective, because again, as I said earlier in the podcast / live stream, if you look at any marathon, any race, any road race, not just elites, but like more the field, the most prominent shoe is going to be a pair of Alphaflys, just because it works. It is the standard that every other super shoe is judged against right now, still, even though there's been some ones that have caught up or maybe even better. Again, I talked about this earlier in the show. Nike just hasn't had to update it. But I do think from a run performance standpoint, they still don't need to update the Alphafly 3. I think it's still up there, if not still at the top as far as performance in a marathon racing shoe. When you're comparing it with an Adidas Evo 3, different scales, that's not an apples to apples comparison. But from a market standpoint, they need to update it. And I think there's been some indecision, and they know they need to nail it. And I think that's what's taken so long. The other thing is I think they've probably been looking at a lot of different materials. I think they've been looking at foams in the shoe. And I think we've seen a couple generations of Alphafly 4 prototypes in world major marathons that didn't look any different from previous ones, even from the previous spring into the fall. But I guarantee the foams in those shoes were totally different. I think Nike's been testing foams quite a bit. I think that's also been a lot of the development of that shoe. Topo, who's also a member on this channel. I see a 6 next to your name. Again, if you want to join this channel, click the join button to become a member and support this channel on a monthly basis. Topo definitely did that, and I appreciate all of you who do that. Half size down transferred the Nike Vomero Premium for me. The rocker works much better, and it feels great at a faster paces, especially on long runs. Chris, do you try pushing the pace in them? So 2 things there. To your point, and I've been thinking about a video on this topic, and I think this kind of made me decide that I'm going to do that. It's about running shoe sizing. I think most runners buy their running shoes too big. And I'm saying that in the standard of you need a thumb's width between your big toe and the tip of the shoe. That I see that repeated endlessly online still to this day. I think that worked 20 years ago with the old EVA shoes that we had, and kind of really sloppy lasts, and that was fine because you didn't have really good lockdown. You kind of needed that extra room because the shoes were just not up to the performance of shoes that we have right now. The fits, the lockdowns, the uppers, and specifically the engineering of the curve in the midsole, the rocker point, or the curve in a plate, if it's a plated shoe, is so precise, so good nowadays. If you find a brand that fits your foot really well, you should buy the smallest shoe you can get away with. Um, Shoes that are too big, and I see a lot of people talking about, they're having fit issues and it hurts their feet. You're getting a lot of sort of toe bumping into the front. That's not always caused by a shoe being too short. Often that's caused by a shoe being too big because it allows your foot to kind of shuffle around and move in there. That's why you get the hot spots or some of the toe trauma and all that sort of stuff. I definitely learned that a couple years ago. I used to run in 9.5s, and then I realized I'm actually a US size 9. Um, Immediately all those problems went away once I went down half a size as my normal size in a shoe. And I think a lot of runners would benefit from that. That's why when I do my fit and sizing in my reviews, I try to be very exacting and specific. And generally it's true to size. I'm not someone who's saying go up half a size unless I really think you should. There have been some shoes that you definitely need to. And I've got a review coming out soon of a shoe that just by default you have to go up half a size because they fit half a size too small. But generally, I just think people have they wear their shoes too big. You just don't need all that room in there. And the more room that you put in a shoe, the more room you have for problems to come up, because then your foot can move around in there and bump into things and create hot spots and blisters and stuff you don't want. So I think that makes sense. Sizing down half a size made the Vomero Premium, which is a giant shoe. There's a ton of shoe here work better for you. I'm not surprised by that at all. It also put this curve, the rocker point, but also the curve of this air unit. And again, for those of you listening, I'm showing the Nike Vomero Premium. It put this in the right position related to the ball of your foot, which when it was half size up from that probably was in the wrong spot. So that's the other thing. If you get a carbon plated shoe or a shoe with a rocker point that's engineered specifically to sit in a very specific part of your foot, and you size up half a size or a full size, you're now putting that in the wrong space and you're just going to get a sloppy fit. You're going to get a sloppy ride. The shoe's not going to perform the way it's meant to. So I think that thing that's just endlessly repeated about a thumb's width in front of your big toe for sizing at least, I don't think that is the way to do it. I think if that's how you want a trainer to fit, cool. But I think for more performance-oriented shoes, not just super shoes, but performance-oriented shoes, that's not the only way to do it. And I think that's also probably not the best advice. And then to your second point around the Vomero Premium pushing pace in them, even though the Vomero Premium is a recovery shoe, this was intended as a recovery shoe. Connor Mance was the one who really developed this as his recovery or long run shoe. Because of the air zoom units and because of the sort of the stability and kind of I'm not going to say this shoe feels like it has a plate in it, but there's something else in the midsole that structures all of this softness and resilience in this shoe, and it's the air unit. This shoe is surprisingly capable for steady running, maybe getting into threshold running. I did do some threshold running last fall in this shoe. It probably wouldn't be the first shoe that I would pick for that, but if that's the only shoe I had and I was feeling really good that day, or I had a workout where I needed to do some threshold reps, but most of it was easy, the Vomero Premium would be a great option for that. The Vomero Plus is the faster shoe. That's the better shoe for that. But yeah, the Vomero Premium was surprisingly good for picking up pace. Once you're getting above threshold, you're getting into like max effort. No, there's just too much shoe there. It's too soft. But yeah, it surprisingly picked up pace. And especially if you get the fit right for them, yeah, picking up the pace in them is great. Nobushan 4100, I follow humble running these days on trail running shoes. I've seen that. Check that out. Yep. Hopefully you watch what I talk about with trail shoes. Um, Definitely stuff coming from me. Because again, like I said in the start of the show, I've been bitten by the trail bug. Really enjoying trail running again. There could be some more coverage of trail stuff on the channel. George IZ6UE recommend put a hot water bottle on your back for 20 minutes to reduce the back pain. Yeah, I have a heating pad. I have those kind of like from Japan. There's like these hot patches you can put. I have this roll on that's kind of like an icy hot type thing. All of that does it really well. And just kind of stretching and doing sort of the yoga and stuff that I do definitely works. Rumble 276, who's also a member for 2 years. He's got a 24 on there, channel member. Again, I see you all the time. Really appreciate the support. Thank you for that. Again, if you want to support the channel, click the join button to become a member. But Rumble 276's comment was, maybe I'll give trail running a try. I hurt my neck and upper back at the beginning of the summer, and every time I run on the roads, the pain flares up. That's what I was talking about. And I think that's probably where that comment came from. A back injury I had about 20 years ago from a car accident flared up recently for me. I found road running, that the repetitiveness of road running really made my back hurt. But going to the trails, no problem. The flexibility and the dynamic movement, no problem. It actually made my back feel good because it loosened me up. So I would definitely go give that a shot. Again, don't go super hardcore, especially neck and upper back. It's a little different than my lower back. I know neck pain. Sometimes I'll sleep strange, or my neck gets a kink in it, especially back here. And there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do about it. But good luck with that. But yeah, I would give trail running a shot, or even just path running. Just get off the repetition of just pure road running, and you may be surprised. Next question. Ramses 2460. Hi, my New Balance SC Elite V4 is giving out. I found the Saucony Elite 2 on sale. Is that a good option for a slower runner like me? Absolutely not. Do not at all get that shoe. I don't even care if they're giving that to you for free. You do not want that shoe. Unless you're an elite run, unless you're a fast runner who specifically wants that softness and that type of forefoot rocker, which is extreme, you do not want that shoe. Most people do not want that shoe. There's a reason you're probably seeing a really good sale on that shoe, because no one wants that shoe. Do not get that shoe. I think you can find a Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 probably on sale at this point because the 5 is out. I would go for that shoe if you want to stick with Saucony. I think that's going to be a great option, especially coming from the SC Elite V4. It may feel somewhat familiar for you. It's going to be a little bit firmer, but it's going to be a great shoe for you. I don't really look at sales. I don't really keep track of that stuff. So off the top of my head, I don't have any other shoes that I could think of that would be on sale. But within Saucony, the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 is going to be a better option. Avoid the Saucony Elite 2 at all costs. You do not want that shoe. Gregory 1 QR1R. What's the best Nike shoe for tempo, long runs, or marathon training? Technically, it's the Zoomfly 6, though that is an older shoe now, but so is the Alphafly 3. Honestly, the Alphafly 3 probably is the best option. Zoomfly 6 is a great shoe, but I just think in 2026, unless you find a really good sale on it, there's no reason to go buy that shoe because it's older. I think that Pegasus Plus 2 is probably going to replace it for most people. I think the Vaporfly 4 is a great trainer. If I was going to go prepare for a marathon right now and I was doing tempo work, the Vaporfly 4 would still be one of the shoes I would do some of the longer runs, longer workouts in. It wouldn't be the only one anymore, but it'd be one of them. I think that's a great option. So yeah, I think technically the Zoomfly 6 from Nike is their tempo trainer. However, I think the Alphafly, and honestly, the Vomero Plus was actually pretty good at that type of stuff. It may be too much shoe for you if you're a smaller runner, maybe too much shoe for you, but the Vomero Plus had a surprising amount of pace, especially for threshold and beyond. Not max effort, but getting into like faster tempo running, Zoomfly Plus is an option. Axis 10 underscore 75. Do you think the Peg Plus 2 will be more of a daily trainer or a tempo threshold shoe comparing to the Zoomfly 6? I think it's both. I think it's Nike playing in the performance trainer category. I think it's a valid daily trainer to me because there's no plate in it. Yes, you have the Air Zoom unit, but that's not, and it kind of gives you some plate-esque feel, especially with the curve, but it's not a plate. You're still going to get more flexibility. You're still going to get all you need in a daily trainer, which is not a plated shoe. But it should be a shoe that some runners can do faster running in. I've already seen reviews saying it's not because of the weight or because of the drop. That's going to come down to the runner. Again, Jakob Ingebrigtsen has been doing very well in that shoe. He did a lot of his workouts, and we saw him doing a lot of faster rep work, track work in a Peg Plus 2, especially when he was warming up for real key intervals where he'd switch over to spikes on that stuff. So yeah, it should do both, and it theoretically should be one of those daily trainers that is a performance trainer that you can do daily running in, and you can do faster running in. Kasara MG, hi Chris, good to see you back. What do you think about running shoes on a tight budget? Do you think sub 100 option worth considering? Generally, no. It's not that budget shoes, and when I'm saying budget shoes, the sub 100 US options, because every brand has that shoe. It's not that they're bad, but they're not good. The thing is if you look for sales of last year's entry level model or even 2 years ago, you'll find much better shoes at about the same price. Like for example, a Nike Pegasus 41, you can probably find for the same price as a current Windflow. I don't know what the current Windflow is. You know, Adidas SL2, which is an old shoe now. You can find that shoe for, I've seen it for like $60 US, far better than any budget trainer. I think you can look at some of the Chinese brands. Again, I'm working on a video about this, about Chinese shoe pricing specifically. You can probably find really good options like the Li-Ning Red Hare 9 Pro is a great option, a little bit tighter fitting, but you know, you should be able to find that in market for under 100 US, generally speaking, way better than any budget shoe. So look for older shoes. Last season, maybe 2 seasons ago, you'll find better deals on what was considered a entry level or performance level shoe from a year or 2 ago. That's going to be far better than any budget shoe. Adams 11, thoughts on Lightspray Cloud Monster 3 Hyper. Go back in the live streams of the podcast and look for the one that has the on title in it. In the title, I put the on shoe in there. Talk about it. I don't have a lot of thoughts. Well, I do have a lot of thoughts. I don't have a lot of like good things to say. Not a great shoe. Not a great shoe. Far behind everything else in the industry. Ori story. I'm a wide-footed runner who just got a Spectre Elite. It's amazing. A bit snug in the midfoot. Crazy. If a Topo is snug in the midfoot, because Topos have the widest, sloppiest fitting midfoot of any shoe I can think of, even worse than an Altra to me, you have a very wide foot, especially in a midfoot. Therefore, you probably need a Topo. But I'm over the moon about the fit overall. Feels incredibly fast and can't wait to get out there. So if that's fitting your foot, you love it, go for it. Awesome. I'm happy. This is why I think things I'm not interested in, I'm definitely not interested in Topo. I'm glad they're out there though, because I'm glad that there's options for runners. And if you have a foot shape that needs that kind of foot and last, awesome. I'm happy that there's a shoe out there for you. And all I'm going to say is enjoy them. Enjoy running in them and enjoy being excited about a shoe that you can't wait to go out in. Standout running. Do running in shoes with a plastic or nylon plate have the same effect as carbon shoes? Like how people say you shouldn't train in carbon? Yes and no. I do not think any plated shoe, whether it's a nylon plate, TPU plate, carbon plate, I do not think that is a valid daily trainer. Period. End of story. No discussion. it just does not allow your foot to move the way it needs to move for a daily trainer. A non-plated shoe is always going to be a better option. However, a nylon or TPU plate is more flexible. So a shoe like the Saucony Endorphin Speed series has a very flexible plate in it, and really the plate's only there to stabilize and control the foot. Mizuno has done this with the wave plates as well. I think you can probably get away with running a little bit more on that, but I still would not recommend that as a daily trainer. Training 100% of the time in a carbon shoe, absolutely not. Everything I said about a plated shoe and a daily trainer, put carbon into that, absolutely not. They're too stiff. You are doing a complete disservice for your running, your form, your mechanics, your foot strength, your lower leg strength, your Achilles strength, all of that. Do not do that. But a nylon TPU, it's fine, though I still wouldn't do that. Though if you want to add that in with a good daily trainer and do that as sort of your bridge shoe between your daily trainer and your carbon shoe, it's a good option. I know a lot of people like that. Shoes like the Asics Sonic Blast, the new Rebel, new Rebel V1, whatever New Balance's new plated Rebel is. I think those are valid options if you like that. I personally do not like those shoes. I do not run very much in those shoes. I only cover them very haphazardly on this channel, especially now with the prevalence of non-plated performance trainers. I just don't think you need that shoe, but I know some people like that style shoes. So, so yeah. So it's not the end of the world, but I still would train and get a daily trainer as a non-plated shoe. Stevie76, how's your Mandarin? What's your go-to phrase? Mandarin is basic. It's very bad. I think my go-to phrase, the first thing I learned in Mandarin was 我很饱, meaning I'm full, no more. I'm like, no more food. My stomach is full. Because if you ever go into any kind of Chinese gathering, culturally Chinese gathering, there's going to be a lot of food, and your bowl is never going to be empty. Just going to say that. And you'll get to the point where you feel like you're going to burst. So, 我很饱, I am full. I am stomach full, basically. You're definitely going to feel that. JW Yuki, will durability become a sacrifice as foams become lighter and softer? I'm generally enjoying React X and Air Zoom, and hope someday daily trainers stay durable even if heavier. So durability has already been sacrificed for current foams. The current market wants resilient shoes. You can't have resiliency, meaning bounce, energy return in a foam, and durability to the same level. You need to pick one or the other. Just the nature of how you build in more bounce, you're decreasing the durability. If you put more durability, you're decreasing the bounce. You cannot have those two go up. Even in ATPU foams, which are probably the best suited to provide both, you still need to make a choice which direction you're going. Though it's less extreme than, say, TPEE or PBA foams, or even EVA. EVA being the worst offender. The more bouncy you make EVA, the more the durability goes down. We've already seen trainers get sacrificed for this. We've already seen foams get sacrificed because people want resilience. People want durability, but as soon as you put a durable shoe to market, and I think something like the Nike Vomero 18 was a good example of this. Great shoe, stable, durable, kind of like a tank. It wasn't as fun, as dynamic as, say, the Vomero Plus, so people, gravitated to the Plus. The Plus happens to be a fairly durable shoe for what it is, but yeah, we've already seen this. As far as, durable foams and durable daily trainers, I talked about this a bit with the Adidas HyperBoost Edge. That's why I think you're seeing a return to beaded foams. The HyperBoost Pro foam and the HyperBoost Edge is a beaded PIBA foam. So you're getting the bounce and the advantage and the lightweightness of PIBA, but by putting it in a beaded midsole, you're putting more durability because you're putting more structure in there. So if the individual little sort of cells, like bubbles of beads of foam in a beaded midsole like the Hyperboost Pro foam break down, generally another bead's going to come fill in that slot, and you're just going to get more structuralness in there. I think it's interesting that one of the approaches to bringing resilience with durability is brands exploring beaded foams again. Saucony's Power MPB has always been sort of the gold standard of durability for a PIBA foam. It's a beaded PIBA foam, but it's never been the most dynamic foam, but it's definitely been in there. It's been in the conversation as far as performance foam. But yeah, I think you're seeing some brands try to bring more durability. I think Li Ning has brought, again, beaded foams back in with boom foam, but they're adding a whole bunch of other foams. Like the Li Ning Red Air 9 Ultra has like 3 types of foam in there. I think that's also another approach to making sure that even though one of the foams in there is probably not very durable, the Super Boom capsule, it's surrounded by 2 more durable foams, different scales. So the shoe, even if the Super Boom capsule sort of collapses, the shoe itself should still be viable. So I think that's another approach to it. And I think you're seeing some brands try that. Brooks is kind of going that direction with some of their co-molding foams. So yeah, you can't have both. You need to make a choice whether it's resilience or durability. And I think the industry has said resilience, not just with racing shoes, with trainers. So you're going to see less durability, and you have seen less durability over the past, especially year to 2. Though I think if you're looking at kind of a curve, I think durability sort of dropped off a cliff maybe a year ago. And now I think we're seeing with ATPU foams, because you can control those foams much more, I think you're seeing some durability come back in, but you're kind of just going up. It's not going down anymore. It's kind of flatline, and it's maybe going up a little bit. So they're trying to figure it out, but again, you have to make a decision. You can't have both, at least with current materials. Even ATP, you still need to make a choice. I'm going to wrap up soon, but I want to get through a few more of these. Rayman0402, not sure if you already covered the topic on the stream or video, but what are the benefits of the curved air zoom unit in the Peg Plus 2 or something like Topo Next Percent? So the curved air unit just brings a much more natural feel to the air unit, as opposed to just putting it under the ball of the foot like the Alphafly needs to do. You can actually curve it up, so you're getting some benefits, plate-like roll, but you're also making sure that that air zoom unit fits to the foot naturally. It's not just this flat thing that you're kind of bouncing off of. It's the thing that's more intricate on your foot. So you're landing, you're rolling, you're compressing, and then you're getting the energy. That doesn't seem like a big deal. And with foam, it's kind of not. But the air zoom, it is. And the fact that Nike was able to do that, the Pegasus Premium last year, and now they've really fine-tuned it. They brought the weight down. They put it in the Peg Plus 2. I think you're just going to see that bouncy and rolling. Very similar to the way an Alphafly 3 feels. Not Alphafly 3 performance, but more in that realm than, say, a Pegasus has ever been in the past. Next man 916, out of curiosity, would you buy the Metasleek for $225 if you had to spend your own money? I talked about this in my Metasleek video. If you are a runner who needs the Metasleek, yes. If I was going after a PR and I was really training hard to go after that PR, and I needed a shoe for speed work that worked on foot strength, mechanics, and I really saw that would give me an edge to develop foot strength and lower leg strength and my Achilles strength to make whatever shoe I was going to be racing in, say it's an Asics Metaspeed Ray, because that's what I decided to go after my PR attempt in. Yes, I would 100% purchase the Metasleek. I wouldn't even think twice about it. If I was an elite runner going for a PR, or a non-elite runner, a sub-elite runner who was going for a PR and looking to get a contract, and I was looking to really min-max all of my training, and that was like a shoe that would allow me to do that, especially for speed work, 100% yes. And that's who that shoe is intended for. If you just want a low-stack shoe to go out and run park runs in, that's not what the Metasleek is. It's not worth that price. You can get an Adios 9, you can get a Nike Fly 4. Again, I talk a lot about this in the Metasleek video. But yes, if you are looking to min-max your training and that is the right tool and it's a tool, not just a shoe, if that's the tool you needed, 100%. So even at 225, I look at the Metasleek as a super shoe. It's a cheaper super shoe, and that's what it is. So yeah, I don't have a problem with the price, and if I was min-maxing my own training plan and buying shoes for that, which I'm reviewing shoes, so I'm getting shoes sent to me, seated shoes for review. If I was actually looking, as a thought experiment, I was thinking about this the other day. If I was actually going to go, I didn't do what I do here on the channel, and I was going to go build a rotation right now, and I was looking for that like fast rep, speed work, heel rep shoe, I would probably pick the Metasleek and I would go out and buy that shoe because that is right now the best option out there. The Adios 9 is very close. It can do it very well. And there's another shoe I'll be talking about on the channel in about a week. I'll have a review of this shoe. Completely different type of shoe, but it's also in that realm. But it's in the ballpark of the same price. Yeah, I would purchase that as much sort of my speed work non-plated flat like shoe. No qualms about it. John 6918, Mizuno Neo Vista 2 or the Vomero 18. Depends. Do you want a softer, more cushioned shoe? That's the Neo Vista 2, not Neo Zen. I always get those confused. So Neo Vista 2 versus Vomero 18. Two totally different shoes. I assume you're looking for a long run shoe. The Neo Vista is a plated shoe, even though it is a more flexible plate and it's more there for stability, not so much propulsion. There is a little propulsion coming from the midfoot in that shoe, but that's more there for stability. Sounds like you're looking for a stable long run shoe. Honestly, the Neo Vista 2 is going to be the better shoe, but I think the Vomero 18 is the more versatile shoe. So if you're looking for a shoe to add to a daily trainer for long run specifically, that's the Neo Vista 2. If you're looking for a shoe that's going to be your daily trainer and can do your long runs that brings some stability and some resilience, that's the Vomero 18. Next man 1916, also in your opinion, what other brands besides Nike emphasize the big toe drive feel? I think we're seeing a bunch of them lately. I think Asics is really working on that with their lasts. I think Adidas also recently has been doing that. I think that we're moving to performance midsoles that are the single piece of foam, and you're really making the foam do that work. I think you're seeing a lot of brands put more emphasis on keeping the big toe straight and not impacted in any way, so you can really develop that kick and that toe drive, which you really need to do. I think when you just had all carbon plated shoes or super trainers with plates in them, you didn't really need to worry about it because the shoe sort of did it for you. But now that we're seeing more of an emphasis on foams and foams being the engine of the shoe, I think you're seeing more brands really pay attention to that. I think the Metasleek from Asics was a really good example of that. I'll have a review of a shoe next weekend. Totally different market for the shoe, but it's a shoe that's really emphasizing that. And I think it's doing it brilliantly. I think Adidas has done that. Yeah, Nike's always done that. Yeah, I think you're seeing more and more of it. Definitely seeing more and more of it. Mr. Alan Amott, good day, mate. Any chance we'll see you down under in Australia? Melbourne, Sydney, or Gold Coast? So my wife and I definitely want to come visit Australia, but the problem with Australia is it's so far away from everywhere. Even here in Taipei, it's still, I think, at least an 8 or 9 hour flight, depending on which coast we're going to. I don't care about long flights. I'm totally used I like a long flight, but like Australia takes forever to get to. But yes, we do want to get down to Australia. Gold Coast first, but we definitely want to go over to Perth and go over to the West Coast. But Melbourne, Sydney, Gold Coast, all that. We need to see all that. I've never been to Australia. I've actually never been to the Southern Hemisphere. Closest I've been is Singapore, like right on the equator, basically. But I've never been in the Southern Hemisphere. Maybe Mexico City is the other close as I've been. But Singapore and Mexico City is as close as I've been to the Southern Hemisphere. But yes, maybe someday. Stevie76, thank you for the super chat. Gold Star Taiwan beer. I don't drink alcohol, but I will say that here in Taiwan, that like Taiwan beer bottle is so iconic. And I actually love there's two Taiwan. Again, I'm not a drinker. I don't drink alcohol, but I noticed Taiwan beer labels, and they are very iconic to me, and they definitely stand out. There's a can and there's a bottle. I think they're maybe the same brand or the same beer, but they're super iconic. There's also another brand here that I think is a cheaper beer that the can is like neon yellow with like neon orange text on it that just says beer. I love that can. As a graphic designer, I love some of those can designs. But yeah, the Taiwan beer bottle or can, super iconic. Totally agree. And again, super appreciate the super chat. Really, really appreciate that support. Thank you so much, Stevie76. That guy, 8474, your recent video on foams was awesome. Can you think of an example of a shoe with a modern foam, TPE, PIBA, ATPU that is good for walking? Honestly, there's a lot of them. I think one of the best walking shoes right now, I think, is the Nike Vomero 18. You probably want to size up at least half a size in that shoe because it is fairly low volume in the toe area. But that's a great walking shoe. I think the Mount to Coast C1 also is a great walking shoe. Both of those have more modern advanced foams in them. Looking at some other shoes. Yeah, I think a lot of these non-plated trainers, as long as they don't have super aggressive geometries, like the Adidas Evo SL is super aggressive geometry, not the best walking shoe. But Vomero 18 from Nike, the Mount to Coast C1, I think the new Hyperboost, not the Hyperboost Edge, but there's a Hyperboost Euphoria, I think, from Adidas. Beaded PIBA in that still, at least some section of it. Probably a great walker. I think what's interesting is next year, I think you're going to see a lot more. So maybe hold that question until 2027, because I think you're going to see quite a bit more shoes that are going to be great walking options that are in very advanced materials. And then you can ask me how I know that then. Access 10 _ 75. You got me into Nike and got my first actual running shoe with the Peg 42. I'm going to get the Peg Plus 2. What other brands would you recommend trying out? I mean, anything at this point. I think there's so many good shoes out there right now in 2026. I think if you're coming from Nike and Nike was like your kind of first foray and you started with the Peg 42, which is a great shoe. I haven't been running in it a lot this year because there's so many other shoes to run in this year. But I think a shoe to look at, you're coming from the Peg 42, but in that same category is the Asics Novablast 6. I think that's one that you should check out. To me, that's sort of taken the place of what the Peg has always been for me. I'm finding it really enjoyable to run in. I think another shoe that if you can get your hands on a pair that you just need to check out is the Dynafish Xianyan. I think that shoe is remarkable. I also think if you're new to running and you become a big Nike fan, I think you need to find a pair of these, the original Nike Peg Plus. And you should be able to find this on sale pretty well right now. Find a pair of these. I think you owe it to yourself to try the original Peg Plus out. I think that's one to check out. I think the Adidas Hyperboost series is great. There's just so many good shoes. The Mizuno Neo Zen, specifically Neo Zen 2, great option. Just there's so many options out there. Being a new runner, the biggest thing you need to do is try a bunch of stuff, because some brands are going to work better for others, and you're going to find what your sort of go-to brands are. The sort of core 4 or 5 core brands I cover on this channel, the reason I do that is because I know they work for me. I think technically the most interesting from an engineering and just product standpoint, but I also know they work for me, and I know why they work for me, and I know what's going to work for me and what's not going to work for me. That took me a long time to figure out what brands work for me, and there's some other brands I don't really ever talk about. One of the reasons is they just don't work for me. So it's like, every runner finds what works for them. Last couple questions. I'm going to wrap this one up. Kasara MG, in today's market, which brand do you think provide the best no nonsense lineup? Think you recommend a brand low information athlete? So what's the kind of the best no nonsense lineup? Honestly, I think Adidas right now is really strong. I think the Supernova series is excellent. I think you get a ton of value. I think you can put in a Hyper Boost, or I think you can just go straight into like an Evo SL. Even though I've had my problems with the Evo SL, I think it's a great option for that. I think Adidas is looking really good. I think Asics is looking really good. I think the Nova Blast, I think the Nimbus, the new Nimbus, I think is a much better option. I think probably the best no nonsense, like you just want to go out and buy 2 shoes and run in them all year and not ever think about it. I think the Saucony Triumph or the Saucony Azura, and then you put like a Saucony Speed or Pro, Endorphin Speed or Pro in there. Those are 2 great shoes that are going to give you a ton of value and a ton of performance. You can even take the Triumph and the Azura, put them together. You get your max cushion shoe. You get to your all-arounder and a shoe that you can kind of race in. I think there's a lot of great options out there. I did a 2 shoe rotation a while back. You can find that on the channel. I think sometime in the fall or maybe over the winter, I'll probably do another 2 shoe rotation video, probably focused around value for money. Talked about that a bit in my 2 shoe rotation video, but probably get a little bit more into that because I think there's a ton of great options out there right now. Christian Pfizer 9735. No, I didn't get the notification. I'm late, my friend. I know you're always here. YouTube notifications, never trust them. Never trust them. Howard Dalshao 7917. What would you say is a good super shoe option for someone who likes natural toe off feel in the Vaporfly 4? I assume VN4 means Vaporfly 4. I think right now the Mizuno Hyperwarp series, the Pure or the Elite, 100%. I think the upcoming Adios Pro 5 will probably be in there as well. The Takumi Sen 12. I think those are going to be really valid options. If you specifically value toe off feel and like that natural, like feeling your toe engaging the ground and kicking off the toe, I think those are going to be your best options. Last 2 questions. I'm seeing some new ones come in. Sorry, but this has already gone way longer than I want. But again, I love sitting here and talking about this stuff. Jew Hobo, what do you think about these new hybrid foam shoes from Brooks Ghost Amp? Lower stack daily trainer, but low-key banger compared to everything else. It's 40 mil nowadays. I've talked a lot about this stuff on the channel. I don't think the Ghost Amp is particularly that great, but I think we are seeing some shoes that are maybe lower stack, not low stack, but definitely under that 40 mil, probably around the 32 mil on the forefoot, or like 28 to 32, somewhere in there. I think there's a lot of great options out there. I think the idea of the Brooks Ghost Amp is great, but again, you have the Evo SL, the DVA Pure, you have the old Nike Peg Plus now. I think the Nova Blast 6 is in that conversation. I think there's a lot of great options out there. If you want to go really low stack, that's when you're getting into the Adidas Adios 9, upcoming Adios 10. I think there's great options there too. I think there's plenty of great options. And to me, that's probably the most exciting area of development right now in running shoes. And the last question, Kristen Pfizer 9735, thoughts on the Adams FAR 1, on the Craft Adams FAR 1. I don't have a lot of thoughts on Craft. I think they're great outdoor hiking, snow sports, winter performance gear, but as far as running, no, I don't think there's much there, especially for road running. Maybe some trail running, maybe more hiking, great, but running, no. They've tried. I just don't think they're there. I don't know that shoe specifically, but just the fact it's craft. And then actual last question, Access 10.7, 10_75. If you get my question, do you think pairing the pegs is worth to get a higher stack shoe like a Vomero lineup right now, or wait until the next year, new generation? Depends. Do you need a shoe? I mean, we will see new Vomeros next year, but probably not till late spring, summer, I think, working off 18-month from release. If you need a shoe now, I think the Peg Plus or the Vomero Plus is a great option. And you can generally find pretty good deals on them. So it's also a good option. But I think there's a lot of great high stack options out there, max cushion options. I think they're definitely worth pairing with a pair of pegs. But the world is your oyster, kind of. There's a ton of options. Adidas Hyperboost Edge is a great option. There's just so many great options out there this year. You can look at the reviews I've done on this channel this year. You can see a lot of them because I've been covering a lot of max cushion shoes this year. But definitely you have a lot of options. And I think in 2026, it's worth getting a max cushion shoe because you're not sacrificing what you used to with that type of shoe. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Again, I could sit here and talk about this stuff all day. That's why I do these live streams, which become podcasts. So again, thank you. For those of you who made it to the end, great. One other plug for the new newsletter, the Sagasu Dispatch. If you're interested in a newsletter a couple times a month in your inbox from me, go to sagasurunning.com/dispatch. You can find all that or look for a link in the show notes. And again, I appreciate everyone's support, the super chats that came in this one. I really appreciate that type of support. Thank you so much, everyone. And with all of that, I will see you in probably 2 weeks. We'll have a lot to talk about because UTMB will be over and the Sydney Marathon will be over. There'll be some shoe stuff to talk about, and there should be some new shoes sitting back there for me as well. So much to talk about. So with all of that, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for the support. Thank you for being here. And I will catch you in the next one.